There's a question almost no one dares to ask out loud, but we all carry it silently. Why, even when everything seems fine, do we feel restless? It's not exactly fear, nor sadness, nor temporary stress. It's a constant pressure in the chest, an urgency without an object, a sense of being behind on something you can't quite name. Modern psychology calls this anxiety. Jean-Paul Sartre would call it bare consciousness. Understanding this difference changes everything. We live in the most comfortable era in human history. Never have we had so many choices, so much access, so many promises of well-being. And yet never have there been so many emotionally exhausted people, medicated, unable to be alone with their own thoughts. This isn't coincidence or personal weakness. It's a direct consequence of realizing that you exist. Sartre expressed it bluntly. Man finds himself only when he realizes that he is alone in a meaningless world. This is not pessimism, it's a diagnosis. Anxiety arises when we stop living on autopilot and for a moment see ourselves from the outside. When we realize there is no script, no definite instructions, and no one will tell us with certainty what to do with our lives. Existential psychology sees anxiety not as a pathology to eradicate, but as a signal of lucidity. The problem is that we're not prepared to tolerate it. From an early age, we learn to associate discomfort with error. If something bothers us, we distract ourselves. If it hurts, we suppress it. If it unsettles, we run from it. But Sartre proposes a radical idea. Anxiety doesn't arise because something is wrong. It arises because something matters. When humans become aware that their lives depend on their choices, vertigo appears. Psychology calls it anticipatory anguish. Sartre calls it existential anguish. It's not fear of falling, it's fear of knowing you could jump. Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff. You don't tremble because the ground is unstable. You tremble because you know you are free to leap. That absolute freedom without guarantees or excuses is what produces anxiety. And here is the key point. You're anxious not because you don't know what to do, but because you know no one will decide for you. Anxiety is the price of freedom. Cognitive psychology says anxiety arises from distorted thoughts, anticipating catastrophes or trying to control the uncontrollable. That's true, but incomplete. Because even when you correct your thoughts, even when objectively everything is fine, anxiety persists. Why? Because it doesn't arise only in the mind. It arises from existing without a manual. Sartre said we are condemned to be free, not because freedom is bad, but because we can't escape it. Not choosing is still a choice. Staying still is still a decision. And the body knows this before the mind. Anxiety is your nervous system reacting to an unavoidable truth. Your life is yours, and no one else is responsible. This clashes with how we live. Modern society tries to anesthetize this truth by keeping us busy, entertained, distracted. It promises that if we follow certain steps, everything will make sense. But meaning is not given, it is created, and creation carries risk. Existential psychology explains that many anxiety crises are not failures, but crises of meaning. The individual can no longer live according to inherited expectations. Something inside demands authenticity. This is why anxiety increases when you question if your job truly represents you, if the life you're living is your choice or inertia, if you are living or merely existing. It's no coincidence that anxiety appears in moments of transition, success, or silence. When external urgencies disappear, the inevitable question emerges: what am I doing with my existence? Sartre would say anxiety is not attacking you, it is awakening you. But awakening hurts. Instead of fleeing, the proposal is to listen to what anxiety wants to tell you. Behind that discomfort lies a truth that, while uncomfortable, can liberate you. In the next part, we will explore how anxiety intensifies when we live in bad faith, how we lie to ourselves to avoid facing our freedom, and why the more you try to escape yourself, the more anxious you become. If anxiety is the price of freedom, then the uncomfortable question is, why do some people live with constant anxiety, while others only feel it occasionally? For Sartre, the answer isn't in the external world, it's in how we relate to ourselves. Here enters the central concept of his philosophy: bad faith. Bad faith is not lying to others. It's deeper and more common. Lying to yourself to avoid taking responsibility for your freedom. In psychology, this resembles defense mechanisms: denial, rationalization, avoidance, mental strategies we use to avoid confronting truths that generate anguish. Sartre saw clearly that many people prefer to live as if they are not free, because freedom comes with responsibility. We say things like, "I have no choice," "This is just how I am," "Life is like this," or "I can't change." These phrases sound innocent, but they serve a precise function. They lighten existential weight. If there is no choice, there is no guilt. If "I've always been this way," there is no responsibility. But the body doesn't get fooled that easily. Anxiety appears as a crack in that lie. From clinical psychology, much chronic anxiety arises from internal dissonance. What you do doesn't align with what you know, want, or value. You can rationalize your life 1,000 ways, but if deep down you know you're avoiding an important decision, anxiety sets in. Sartre would say you are living in bad faith because you try to see yourself as a fixed, determined object, when in reality you are a being in constant construction. You are not something, you are a project. Denying this creates inner tension, like trying to freeze something meant to move. Think of how often you do things you don't want, accept situations that drain you, or postpone important choices, telling yourself later, not because you can't decide, but because deciding means accepting consequences. And consequences are frightening. Anxiety appears in that space between what you know you should do and what you keep avoiding. Neuroscience confirms this. The nervous system remains on high alert when it perceives an unresolved threat, and no threat is more persistent than a life lived in contradiction with itself. The body interprets that inconsistency as danger, not external, internal. This explains why anxious people often feel tired for no reason, tense for no clear cause, restless even in moments of rest. It's not the rest that's missing, it's coherence. Sartre understood that bad faith doesn't eliminate anxiety, it multiplies it. Living as if you weren't free leaves you still responsible, only unconsciously. There's a brutal paradox here. The more you try to escape your freedom, the more anxiety you feel. The more you hide behind roles, labels, or excuses, the more pressure accumulates. Anxiety becomes the constant reminder that you're evading something essential. Existential psychology stresses that this kind of anxiety cannot be resolved solely with relaxation techniques or positive thinking. Temporary relief may occur, but it returns because its source is existential. The cause is the conflict between the life you live and the life you know you could live. Sartre insisted that even in the most limited circumstances, we remain free in our attitude, in our internal choices, in how we respond. When we deny that and reduce ourselves to absolute victims of circumstances, we fall into bad faith, and anxiety becomes a permanent companion. This doesn't mean blame or demand immediate radical change. It means something more honest. Recognize where you're lying to yourself. Recognize which decisions you keep postponing. Recognize what parts of your life you maintain only out of habit, fear, or comfort. Anxiety in this sense is like an ethical alarm. It doesn't punish you. It signals you. It says, something here is misaligned. Something in you knows you could act differently, and until you face it directly, it will keep insisting. In the next part, we'll go even deeper. We'll explore how modern society amplifies anxiety by pushing us to live according to external expectations, how too many choices paralyze, and why, for Sartre, the only real way forward is learning to face anxiety and transform it into authentic action. So far, we've discussed anxiety as a deeply individual experience tied to freedom and personal responsibility. But Sartre was clear about one thing. The individual does not exist in a vacuum. How we live, think, and feel is profoundly influenced by the social context. And modern society doesn't just fail to reduce anxiety, it systematically amplifies it. We live surrounded by messages telling us how we should be, what success looks like, at what age we should achieve certain milestones, what a well-lived life should resemble. These expectations are often subtle: advice, aspirational models, silent comparisons. Social psychology shows that humans regulate themselves by observing others. The problem arises when that comparison becomes constant and external. Sartre would say this creates a collective form of bad faith. We stop asking ourselves what we truly want and start living according to what is expected of us. We choose careers, relationships, lifestyles, not because they resonate with us, but because they seem correct from the outside. The result is a life that appears functional, but internally hollow. Anxiety emerges when there is a void we try to fill with external validation, and the more we try, the more evident the emptiness becomes. Psychology calls this existential emptiness. Sartre understood it as the inevitable consequence of living a life that isn't authentically chosen. The problem is not what is missing outside. It is the lack of internal ownership. Modern society adds another layer, the excess of choice. Paradoxically, the more options we have, the more anxious we become. Psychology calls this analysis paralysis. Sartre frames it more profoundly. Every choice we make eliminates countless other possibilities. Choosing doesn't just define what we do, it defines what we give up, and that renunciation weighs heavily. This is why many people become trapped in indecision, not because they don't know what they want, but because they cannot tolerate losing other possible versions of themselves. Anxiety becomes a form of suspension. While we delay, everything remains open. But this constant openness is psychologically unsustainable. Add to this the culture of performance. You must not only choose, but choose correctly, quickly, and demonstrate results. Personal value is measured in productivity, visibility, and success. Clinical psychology shows that this environment produces constant evaluation anxiety. Sartre sees it as alienation. You begin to see yourself as an object that must perform, rather than a subject that exists. When you see yourself through the eyes of others, you become a thing. Sartre called this the gaze of the other. It's not just about being judged. It's about internalizing that judgment and living to satisfy it. Anxiety emerges because you are no longer in touch with your direct experience. You are living a version of yourself designed for acceptance. This explains why even achievements can generate anxiety. You reach what should have made you happy, yet feel an odd emptiness. The problem isn't the achievement, it's that it wasn't an authentic choice. Psychology shows that when goals aren't aligned with personal values, success does not reduce discomfort, it intensifies it. Sartre is brutally honest. No one can live for you. No social structure, no external ideal can give you meaning if you do not claim it as your own. Anxiety appears when we delegate responsibility, while remaining aware that no one can carry it for us. Many people seek quick fixes, constant distraction, consumption, overstimulation, or shallow spiritual practices, promising peace without confrontation. Sartre offers no anesthesia. He offers lucidity. And lucidity is uncomfortable. Accepting that there is no given meaning, no guarantees, no instruction manual doesn't eliminate anxiety. At first it may intensify it, but it also opens the door to something different, the possibility of creating meaning instead of chasing it. Anxiety starts to transform when you stop seeing it as an enemy and start understanding it as a signal. Not that something is wrong with you, but that something in your life requires conscious attention. Society pushes you to fit in. Anxiety pushes you to ask whether you want to. In the final part, we will explore the decisive step. How, for Sartre, the only real way forward is not to eliminate anxiety, but to act despite it. How authentic action reorganizes mind and body, and why true calm does not come from safety, but from commitment to your own existence. We've reached the most uncomfortable and simultaneously liberating point in Sartre's thought. Anxiety does not disappear when you understand its origin. It disappears when you act despite it, not when you conquer it, not when you control it, but when you stop organizing your life around avoiding it. This is where many people stop. Understanding is safe, reflecting is comfortable, acting exposes you. Sartre was clear. Existence precedes essence. You don't discover who you are by thinking endlessly about yourself. You discover it by choosing and taking responsibility for those choices. Modern behavioral psychology observes something similar. Anxiety decreases when a person stops avoiding what they fear and begins to expose themselves consciously. But Sartre goes further. It's not just about facing external situations. It's about exposing yourself, to your freedom, to your responsibility. True calm doesn't come from certainty. It comes from taking a stand. When you consciously choose something, even without guarantees, something shifts internally. The body stops being on constant alert because you are no longer suspended in indecision. You have taken a position in your own life. This explains why many people feel relief after making difficult decisions, even when those decisions bring problems. The issue isn't difficulty, it's avoidance. Anxiety feeds on, not yet, someday, and when I'm ready. Sartre would say you are never ready, you become ready by acting. A common misunderstanding. Living authentically doesn't mean never feeling anxiety. It means stopping fleeing from it. Anxiety does not vanish in an authentic life. It transforms into a compass, pointing to what matters. It may hurt, but it no longer paralyzes. Existential psychology emphasizes that commitment is a regulating force, not because it eliminates uncertainty, but because it provides direction. When you know why you do what you do, discomfort becomes structured. It may still hurt, but it no longer dominates you. Sartre insisted that every choice affirms values. Choosing is not just for yourself. It is a statement of what kind of human being you are. That's terrifying, but also dignifying. Anxiety diminishes when you stop seeing yourself as someone to whom things happen and start seeing yourself as someone who responds. This doesn't require heroism or grand gestures. Often, authentic action is silent, saying no where you always said yes, ending a situation that no longer represents you, confronting uncomfortable truths you've postponed. Small, sustained choices reshape your relationship with anxiety. Society promises calm if you follow the right path. Sartre offers something different, honesty with yourself. And honesty demands renouncing excuses, not to punish you, but to give you control back. Anxiety loses power when it ceases to be an ignored signal and becomes a listened to message. It's not about finding a universal meaning. Sartre denies that it exists. It's about creating local meaning, concrete, embodied in your daily actions. Meaning doesn't appear before you live. It emerges as you live authentically. Modern therapies, even if unspoken, align with Sartre. Acting according to your values reduces anxiety more than chasing tranquility directly. Directly pursuing peace becomes unattainable. Peace arises unexpectedly as a consequence of commitment. Accepting your anxiety doesn't mean resigning to suffering. It means ceasing to fight a part of yourself trying to convey an important message. Anxiety is not your life's enemy. It is the symptom of a life demanding full engagement. Sartre doesn't promise happiness. He promises something more demanding: lucidity and responsibility. Paradoxically, within that demand emerges a deeper form of calm. Not the calm of the secure, but the calm of someone faithful to their own existence. Perhaps you cannot eliminate anxiety, but you can stop living on your knees before it. You can face it and say, I know you're here, but I will choose anyway. And in that quiet, firm act, something begins. Not a life without fear, a life no longer defined by avoidance,